Welcome to Plastic Model Mojo, a podcast dedicated to scale modeling, as well as the news and events around the hobby. Let's join Mike and Kentucky Dave as they strive to be informative, entertaining, and help you keep your modeling mojo alive.
Well, listeners, welcome to the first feature episode of October.
Yes.
Episode 125. It's going to be another shop talk with Mike and Kentucky Dave. Kentucky Dave, how are you, man?
Doing good. We are solidly into fall. In fact, was listening to On the Bench and Cutting My Yard, possibly for the last time of the season. I'll switch over to picking up leaves, I think, depending on how much rain we get from here on out. But the temperatures are dropping.
I gotta say though, man, you were like the proxy guest on that episode. I was listening to it during my morning walk, and you came up more than once, maybe more than twice.
Yep, it's always nice. Digger Dave is a great guy and loved having him, and we're already planning for him to come back in 2026 and go to Huntsville, because I think that would blow his mind. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It was a good episode. I enjoyed listening to it, and real space is coming on.
Well, what's coming on in your model sphere?
Unlike some people on this podcast, I recently got to attend a model contest, and that really jazzed up my model sphere. Anytime I go to a model contest, I always come home jazzed. I bought a bunch of books. I bought one kit. I got to visit with friends, got to have lunch with Jeff Groves, the Inch High guy, and that can't help but get your model juices flowing. Now, I haven't been actually at the bench the last 4 or 5 days as much as I wanted to, but that's life stuff intervening. But I'm all fired up and got a lot of projects at different tipping points. So how's your model sphere?
Man, I'm coming off a rough couple of weeks.
Well, I mean, when you lose power for 5 days, that kind of takes the wind out of
Well,
you.
it wasn't 5. It was most of 4.
Most of 4. Well,
most of 4.
Yeah, modeling by candlelight really isn't the way to go.
Unless you're stretching sprue, I don't know what else you're gonna get accomplished under candlelight.
Yeah, you could have gotten a lot of sprues stretched in the last 4.
If I could have found it.
Yeah, well, that's true too.
Yeah, but man, I don't know, it's just bad luck. I mean, in the week prior, we were up in Cincinnati, my wife and I, visiting one of her college roommates and her husband, and they were moving their daughter. They're house hunting because she's employed in Cincinnati area now. And man, we were sitting there at this taco place eating lunch, and Steve, the husband, says, "Man, I think you got some kind of caterpillar on your shirt there." And I, like I always dress, I've got a t-shirt on, I've got like a unbuttoned polo shirt over it, right? Yeah. And this caterpillar's like right on the inside of the button panel of the shirt. So no big deal, right?
Yeah.
Well, I flick it off with my fingernail.
Uh-huh.
And then my whole left torso, upper abdomen just starts burning and itching.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I got online real quick, and the caterpillar's still laying on the ground down below the table, crawling around. I found the exact same one. It's not venomous, but it's got these like irritating, stinging nettle hairs on it.
Oh, wow.
And man, I still have the residual of a pinhead rash on my lower abdomen.
Holy mother.
So I got taken out by a caterpillar, man.
Well, that's not as cool as having fought off a lion or a bear or anything like that. But man,
not Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom worthy. I don't.
Yeah, well, I've been taken out by yellow jackets on a couple of times, so it happens.
That's a little cooler than a caterpillar.
Yeah, but not a ton cooler.
And then we've alluded to, I was down no power due to the residuals from the hurricane that came through Lexington. We must have been on the far western edge of all that because you didn't get very much.
Right. No, Lexington took the far western edge of it, and Louisville just got some wind and rain and a bunch of sticks down in my yard. Speaking of that, you've got lots of family in East Tennessee. Everybody okay?
Everyone's okay, but there's a little bit of listener mail to that effect, and I guess that's a good segue to get into the listener mail, Dave.
Okay. Well, wait a minute. You gotta have a modeling fluid before you get into listener mail.
I guess it's not a segue, folks. I skipped over a segment.
Well, okay. As you're preparing to dive into listener mail, Mike, do you have a modeling fluid?
I do, Dave. It is Bullet Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey.
Good choice.
I've circled back to the Bullet, old favorite. I tell you, after some of the sweeter stuff I've had over the last few episodes, this one's biting a little hard.
Huh. I do think that there is a trend in bourbon towards sweet. And so it's good to know the Bullet's still out there for the folks that don't like it quite as sweet.
Well, that's what I've got. So what do you got?
I have Zirkus Fest Oktoberfest Lager Beer, Malty and Crisp by Highwire Brewing, Asheville, North Carolina.
I hope they're still brewing beer.
Me too. That takes us back to listener mail.
All right. Well, I guess we ought to get into it then.
Okay.
Because, yeah, that's going to come up at least once.
All right.
Actually, twice. And we'll get into it. But it's not the first one, Dave.
Okay. Go ahead.
The first one is first listener mail. We got a few. It's not quite as heavy as when we were soliciting input for the Wheel of Accidental Wisdom, but we're kind of back to our kind of low normal average, I think.
Okay.
So, folks, send some more in, and I'll hit you up for that again at the end of the segment. But first up, Bruce Bingston. And Bruce is from San Francisco, California, out on the West Coast, Northern California. And I sent you this one earlier today. He sent us a PDF file about his 2023, the year in models.
Okay.
Did you look at it?
I have not seen it yet.
Oh, man.
I just got in from the yard, man.
All right. I got to start sending you these as soon as I get them.
Yes, you should.
Well, he says it's 9 months late, but at least it's done. It's a synopsis of his builds throughout the year. And when you get there, I may just post a thing to the dojo so everybody can look at it. I mean, it's a PDF file, so it'll have to go as a file download or a file link.
Yeah.
But two things to mention. First off, there's two pictures at the very front end of this thing. And one of him when he's like 8 years old, and he's holding this, I don't know, looks like an old AMT hot rod kit.
Yeah.
Built up. And then he's got a picture of him current day, and he's holding the same model.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I guess not a new build of the same model, but the actual one.
Oh, wow. It's amazing that it survived his childhood.
And then he's got another, he's got this indicated in the picture. He's got another one that's circled and between the two photos and a line connecting him. There's another model he's got from his childhood. It's also in the photograph. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
The other thing is he showed a picture of a World War I diorama he'd built, aviation diorama. And on top of the acrylic case he's got it in is an Imperial German, it's the Kretchen, the pillbox or pork pie field cap.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool because his grandfather brought it back from World War I.
Oh, listen, anytime you have any of those things that your relatives brought back from the war, and to value those and find a way to display them because they really are an important part of your heritage.
Well, those caps had two devices on the front of them. There was one on the cap band that was the state colors of the whatever German state the unit was from. I believe that's right.
Yeah, Hitler, there's a famous photograph of Hitler from his World War I service where he's wearing one of these type caps.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the other is just the national tricolor cockade
right.
Higher up on the hat, the black, white, and red.
Red.
Well, his cap's missing that. So I just sent him an email today saying, hey, if you don't have it loose laying around and you want a real one, I know where you can get one. In fact, I know where you can pick the one you want. And they're original. I mean, they're not really a rare thing if you know where to look.
Yeah.
So hopefully I'll hear back from him. And if he wants to complete that cap back to what it was before it lost its tricolor,
yeah,
he can do so. So we appreciate it. And we're going to get that up. And Dave, you need to look at that. So
I will take a look at it.
He's a good modeler. He's in your scale too.
Oh, got to give love to 72nd scale. I just wish that most years I had enough modeling to be able to do my year in modeling and not have it be a one page report.
You'd need a lot of pictures.
Yeah. Yeah.
Up next, Ken Acosta from Huntsville Club. You know, they just had a show wrap up about a week or two ago. Well, a couple things. Once he sent me pictures of a build Mike Ida Cavage, our friend from the Atlanta area, had entered in there in that show.
Yep. And,
what else was it? Oh, Ken had sent me the second set of parts in that Chinese 3D printed detail set for the SOC3 Seagull.
Uh-huh.
Well, I asked him about, that company also makes a couple of catapults.
Right.
One on a plinth and the other on a turret.
Yep.
For a pre-war ship. And he actually ordered one of them and got it. And he had a little damage that the company's going to replace, but he says pretty stinking nice.
Really? That's good news.
It is good news. And El Presidente over at the Model Geek said when we saw him up at Heritage Con,
yeah,
he had ordered one. I have to assume it's from the same company. His was shaped like a banana, so
yeah.
I guess it's kind of a mixed bag, but yeah, I may be taking a risk and trying out one of those because they look pretty good. And
you shoot your shot. It'd be neat to have. It'd be neat to do. That was a great way to display both the turret and a catapult.
Up next, also from California, Dave, Steve Berchtold from Covina, California. And we discussed box art during the Wheel of Accidental Wisdom last episode.
Yes.
Came up on the wheel. Yeah. And he pointed us to a website, the Box Art Den.
Yeah.
He says, take a look at that website, and you're going to take a stroll down memory lane because they got a lot of the really old classic artwork on there.
I am dimly aware of that website. You can fall down a rabbit hole and just get so lost in all that old box art.
Is this where I say you're dimly aware of a lot of stuff?
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Or just I'm dim. That would be even better.
Well, we'll put the link to this website up in the show notes, and folks can check it out because there's some cool old stuff on there.
Yes.
Up next, Dave, is Michael Aluzzi from Peoria, Illinois, and the Jack Weislich Polish Coat Swatchers chapter of the IPMS.
Yep.
And he was appreciating William Adair's episode, and he's checked out the 3X reading glasses as well.
I am about to do that myself. I have come to that determination.
Well, folks need to remember William was actually special ordering some higher power glasses.
Right.
It's 5X and 6X, I believe.
Yeah.
But anyway, Michael says he's tried two different types of visors, and they work, but they get hot or they're heavy or whatever.
Right.
And he actually is a model railroader a bit himself, and he said he put on these glasses and was able to put in a tiny little 6-prong plug into a tiny little 6-hole receiver that connected a tender to one of his steam locomotives.
Good for him. There are so many jokes I could make, and I'm not going to make any of them. I'm proud of him for getting the prongs in the holes.
And he's going to order Williams' book.
Yeah.
World War I's another interest, but 1 to 144th. Oh my, he says.
Speaking of which, have you been following Mr. Adair's build of that Taub in 72nd or in 144th scale?
I have.
He's been posting to the dojo, and oh my gosh, it's beautiful to begin with, but then you have to adjust your mind and say, this is 1/144th scale, so it's about that big. And it's just amazing.
He's going to have to tackle a 4-engine.
Yes. Yeah, we'll have to get on him about that.
Have to goad him on. Well, I'll come back to Michael in a minute, but up next is Terry Wilkinson, and we mentioned his yoga practicing on the last episode as well.
Yeah.
And he said to tell Dave to get him on the seminar list for Norfolk. Now that's a joke.
Yes.
He says, in all seriousness, yoga is perhaps the best practices for folks approaching middle age or beyond, and it's fantastic for sedentary hobbies like ours. If we're interested, he could give us a few basics, Dave.
I completely agree. Hey, Nick, you never know what happens in the dojo at the next Nationals. Can you imagine the 6 a.m. yoga practice in the dojo?
Anything's possible, man.
It is.
Terry, thanks for writing in and for the little joke there. And maybe we'll take you up on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, up next is Jason Campbell he's around Knoxville, Middle Tennessee area, somewhere in there. He wanted us to reach out or mention this Appalachian scale modelers in our next episode. They're based in Johnson City, but those guys are all around the Tri-Cities area and beyond a little bit. This gets into the weather of last week. And Michael Luzzi was asking me about my family because he even recognized that Johnson City and mentioned it. I'm from Johnson City, Tennessee originally. My folks are still there. A lot of my extended family's in Greene County. There's a lot of crap going on there with the weather and bridges getting washed out and all that. All my immediate and extended family in that area are fine. So thank folks for asking. It's just impossible, though, that we don't know someone directly affected by this. And, man, it's a mess.
Yeah.
Western North Carolina, Chimney Rock, Asheville, Boone, Blowing Rock, all those areas up through there. Yeah, it's something like we've never seen before, and it's just a mess. And appreciate the thoughts, folks. And Jason went a step further. He provided a couple of charitable outreaches for possible donation. I've not checked out these, so if anybody's so inclined to do something, we'd appreciate it. And I'm sure the folks down there would greatly appreciate it. I can't speak for these two organizations personally, but they're a place to start. Check them out. Have a look. If you want to help out, help out. I mean, there's people down there who are, hopefully it's a little better now, a week out, but had basically been islanded by washed out roads. And I think Asheville can only be approached on the interstate from the east still.
East now. That's
because
right.
I-26 and I-40 both have washouts.
Yeah, it was completely at one point right after the storm, Asheville, which is not a small city, was completely cut off from the outside world by road. And that's just amazing. And because the mountains are so vertical in that part of North Carolina, East Tennessee, I mean, when the water came down, it all ran into the valleys, and it's just amazing. I got to say, the thing that I found most amazing was all of the ordinary Americans with helicopters and earth-moving equipment who didn't wait to be asked, but showed up and started doing stuff. And, that speaks really well of the best of America and her spirit. Is people saw problems, they went out. If you had a helicopter, you had a helicopter. If you had an earth mover, you had an earth mover. If you had a chainsaw, you had a chainsaw. And they just went. I saw one guy leading a mule train into the mountains because he had pack mules and he could get into areas where literally there was no longer any roadway to get to these places. So it's devastating, but it's also heartening to see how ordinary Americans came together to try and help.
Well, they still got a tough road to hoe, and we'll be watching that. I know I will because I got family down there. But so, folks, thank you. We'll put those links, Jason, we'll put those links in the show notes. And if folks want to help out, please help out. I'm sure folks need it down there.
Absolutely.
Well, Dave, that's it from the listener mail email side of things. What do you got?
Well, I've got a few from the DM side. First is our friend Christian Gurney from the Bases by Bill fame, who reached out to me to point out a news story that I had seen just before he DM'd it to me. The last surviving crewman, Japanese crewman, that participated in the Pearl Harbor raid died at 106 years old just the other day. And there was a news report on it. Christian saw it, knew, of course, of my interest in regard to Pearl Harbor and everything. So he passed the story on. I'll take and post the link to the story in the dojo. Just fascinating. You don't think that at this point, there would be somebody that was still alive, especially considering how many of those pilots and crewmen didn't even survive the war. So it was nice of him to think of me when he came across that story. Next, Eric Kervina, he DM'd two things. One, there's a wheel question that is really a good wheel question that I'm going to email to you so that you'll have it. You can put it in your proper folder so you'll have it for the next wheel. But he also said, you know how we were talking on the previous episode about how judging may cause, the way a lot of 1, 2, 3 judging is, that it may cause people to play it safe, and how you see a large number of look-alike, very safe builds entered in contests as opposed to magnum opuses. One point he made, and this is an absolutely valid point, is that magnum opuses are, by definition, a magnum opus. They are rare and they consume a lot of time. So it's logical that most builds most modelers make aren't their magnum opus. So it's true that no matter what judging system, you're going to see a lot more of the regular builds than you will see somebody who has just gone crazy with their favorite subject. And
that's probably true.
And that is a good point. Our friend Anthony Goodman reached out. He had listened to the last Shop Talk episode where we talked about storage, and I had described how I store my decals, basically in clear envelopes, in binders, in a opaque Tupperware, Rubbermaid or Tupperware container with silica gel packets sprinkled throughout. And he asked me to send him photographs of that because he wants to organize something similar. So I will send him those photographs. I haven't forgotten. You mentioned Michael Iluzzi had emailed. He also had DM'd because he heard we were going to be at MMSI. He's going to be there, and he just wanted to say he was looking forward to seeing us. On that same subject, Bob Sarnowski DM'd to say, well, if you're going to MMSI, depending on how you're coming, you know you're going to go by the Three Floyds Brewery. Well, Bob, yeah, that had not missed our attention. So Mike and I are going to see if we can somehow build that into our journey to MMSI. But thank you for the reminder anyway.
We need to verify that their tap room's even open, because I'm not sure that they have one.
Yeah, we have to check the details before we go and figure out, do we hit it on the way up or do we hit it on the way back, or what we do, but we'll definitely figure that out. But I appreciate him worrying about us to that extent to say, hey, don't forget. And that's all I've got from the DM side.
All right. Well, folks, if you want to get in on the listener mail, you can do so by emailing us at plasticmodelmojo@gmail.com, or you can direct message us through the Facebook direct messaging system and send them on in. We like this segment a lot, and this time was a little lighter than I like. So let's get some more, folks.
Folks, if you have not rated us and subscribed in whatever podcast app you're using, please do so. Please subscribe. Please rate the podcast 5 stars. It helps drive our visibility. Also, if you are a listener and you know someone, a fellow modeler who isn't a listener, please help them, point us out to them. The way we continue to grow in listenership is modelers who listen telling their friends. I cannot tell you how many people I've encountered, new listeners, who say, oh, so-and-so turned me on to this podcast. And we appreciate it. It's the best thing you can do, one of the best things you can do for us.
And after you've done that, please, if you want to check out the other podcasts in the modelsphere, go to www.modelpodcasts.com. That's model podcast plural with an S. .com. It's a consortium website set up with the help of Stuart Clark at the Scale Model Podcast up in Canada. There, Stuart has aggregated all the banner links to all the other podcasts out in the model sphere in the spirit of cross-promotion, and you can go to that single website and check out all the other podcasts, and we appreciate it if you do that. In addition, Dave, we got a lot of podcast, blog, and YouTube friends out in the model sphere.
Yes, and got to see some of them at the MMCL show.
And we got to hear one of them on the last episode, Mr. Chris Wallace, model airplane maker. Chris, thanks for being our guest last time in the third chair. Chris has a great blog and YouTube channel, Model Airplane Maker. You're going to want to check that out. Another great one we get to see every now and then in our travels is Stephen Lee, Sprue Pie with Frets. He's got a great long and short form blog. Always interested to see what Steve's got to say.
Yeah, we got to see him at both AMPS and the Nationals this year.
Oh, we did. Maybe we'll see him again soon.
Yep.
Evan McCallum, a.k.a. Panzermeister 36 on YouTube. Great YouTube channel. A lot of build reviews and model armor weathering and railroad model weathering. He just finished up his Bradley build, Dave.
Yes. Yeah, looks great. I have not gotten through the whole video yet. I cannot wait. Because we interact with Evan pretty regularly, we've gotten to see snippets here and there, just as we've all talked back and forth. I cannot wait to see the whole video.
Jim Bates, Scale Canadian TV on YouTube. Jim, we haven't seen anything since the F-35B review.
Yeah, he said, I talked to him just the other day. He promises one's going to drop this weekend.
Come on, Jim.
Come on, Jim.
Get you over the finish line. And I want to add one, Dave.
Okay.
Paul Budzik Scale Model Workshop.
Yes.
Not just the YouTube channel, but folks, you need to go over to Patreon and search for Scale Model Workshop. You can get in on Paul's latest videos. And what's he building? A26?
A26 kit. He is
Kit bash.
I would call it pulling a Mike Basket, but I really think that Mike Basket pulls a Paul Budzik. So Budzik's pulling a Budzik. Basically what he's doing is taking a couple of kits and doing exactly the same way you do with a lot of your builds, where it's like, how can I make an A26 out of these parts, and scratch building, altering, or modifying to make as close as I can get to the prototype item. And some of the things he does are just flat out amazing. That box he's got for alignment, I would never in a million years have thought of that.
So folks, check it out. It's worth every second.
Absolutely. Finally, if you are not a member of IPMS USA, IPMS Canada, IPMS Mexico, or whatever national chapter where you happen to live, please join your IPMS national chapter. It's a bunch of guys and gals who give up some of their modeling time to try and make your modeling life better, many times in ways you don't see every day, but it's happening in the background. If you are an armor modeler or post-1900 figure modeler, AMPS is out there, the Armor Modeling and Preservation Society, a really great group of guys, many of whom that Mike and I know personally and have known for years, really dedicated to the art of armor modeling and advancing the art. It's a really great organization and worth joining. I can't speak highly enough. Mike and I are already planning to go to the National next year.
Dave, let's have a word from our sponsor.
You got it.
Plastic Model Mojo is brought to you by Model Paint Solutions, your source for Harder and Steenbeck airbrushes, David Union power tools, and laboratory-grade mixing, measuring, and storage tools for use with all your model paints, be they acrylic, enamels, or lacquers. Check them out at www.modelpaintsolutions.com.
Well, Dave, it's another shop talk. Folks seem to like these, so I think this is how we're going to format our episodes from now on, at least in the foreseeable future, that don't have guests.
Okay. Well, sounds good to me.
And I think we got 3 topics lined up again that we're going to have a little conversation about. So
okay.
Hopefully we'll get through them all right.
You got it.
Now, you came up with these this time.
Oh, thanks. That's great. That's for the listeners. If you didn't like this episode, you're going to blame me.
No, that's not what I meant at all.
Yeah,
I meant that I did not. Usually if I come up with one, I've given it a little bit of forethought.
Oh, great. It's even worse.
No, it means that I don't know where you were going with these, and I'm
All
curious
right.
to see what direction we take.
Okay.
That's all. The first
All
topic, Dave, you mentioned you want to talk about in this episode is bases.
Yes, I do. And I've got 3 or 4 small subtopic areas. One, whether you should put your model on a base or not.
Yes.
I think yes, I think yes, you should, because A, it makes ease of transport and ease of movement better. I will tell you, at the MMCL show, we had to move some aircraft to get the aircraft categories spaced correctly. And it makes it so much easier if your model is sitting on a base. But that brings up a subtopic.
And what is?
No base is better than a crappy base. Okay. If you are going to put your model on a base, make it something more than a slab of plywood, unfinished slab of plywood or something. In other words,
Well, most people do that.
yes, and absolutely. But my point being that models, if you take them to contests, are supposed to judge the model, not the base, unless it's entered in a vignette or diorama category. However, it cannot help affecting how a viewer looks at the model if you have a well-finished base. And there's 2 types. You can have a base that represents what the aircraft would actually be, and I'm using aircraft modeling with armor. I'll let Mike speak to some of the armor issues. But regarding an aircraft, you have 2 types of bases. Either one, the aircraft model sitting on a surface that depicts what the aircraft would actually be sitting on, either on a grass strip or on a carrier deck or on a tarmac or whatever. That's number 1. Or number 2, you can have what I call a presentation base. And this base, the model is not sitting on a base that represents a surface. It is just a base that is, in its best form, a really nicely finished, not necessarily plinth, but plinth or base that creates a good background for the model to be viewed on. Lots of times these are mirrors, or they are a solid black rectangle, nicely finished. The key here is nicely finished. If you're going to put your model on a base, and I do think you should, because again, it solves a lot of problems, particularly if you attach the model to the base, but put some effort into the base. Don't just sit the model on an unfinished mirror. Don't sit the model on just a piece of tile. Do something to make it look like the base is as finished as the model is. Because again, even though it's not supposed to be judged, and judges don't judge the bases, for the viewers coming along and looking at the model, they are affected by how well it is displayed. And so, yeah, I am a fan of bases as long as you put the effort into the base to make the finish on the base equivalent to the finish on the model. That you look at it and you can tell the person didn't just at the last minute grab an unfinished mirror and drop it on there, or grab an unfinished tile or, piece of plywood or whatever. Make it more than that. Corollary to that, if the model is on a base but not attached to it, you need a sign, and you need a prominent sign that says, "Attention, model not attached to base." And again, not just some little note on the entry form that might get hidden under the model or something. You need a prominent sign, attention, model not attached to base, just to help those who are either judging or have to move models prior to judging so that they don't accidentally damage your model because they thought it was attached and therefore moved it more harshly than they might have if they realized that it wasn't attached. So in regard to bases, yes rather than no. I think bases help the model contest organizer. They can improve the display of the model. If you're doing a base, I prefer attached as to unattached, but if you do unattached, please put a big sign. And finally, again, put the effort into finishing the base so it has the same quality level as the model that you're displaying. So tell me about armor, Mike.
It's not just armor, it's everything.
Right.
And I'm going to walk back yes, it should be on a base a little bit.
Okay.
Because I like the way you said it. I think it should be. If somebody asks me, I've got this model, should I put it on the base? I'm going to say yes.
Right.
That's a little different than being so absolutist that it just should be no matter what. Because other people have other opinions.
Right.
That's fine. And we've had a guest who built a wonderful vacuform 48 scale short Sterling that wasn't on a base.
Yes.
And we thought high enough of it to have him on the show. So
yep.
Clearly it's not the end all.
No.
Though I do agree. I think it does increase the overall appeal of the presentation.
Yes. Yeah. If done well.
If done well. And, the thing that comes to mind for me is what I consider bad bases.
Okay. Let's talk about bad bases.
And you mentioned unfinished plywood. I think that's a little hyperbolic.
It is, but I'm trying to make a point.
You are. And let's pull that back down to reality a little bit. What do I consider a bad base?
Yeah.
I'm not even going to talk about sidewater because that's something else. Because everybody was thinking I was going to say that, right?
No.
Too big.
Yes. Oh gosh, I didn't even address that subject. Making the base right size to the model.
I need to start paying more attention and come up with a mental flow chart to figure out what I'm seeing and what makes it unattractive to me.
Yeah.
I would say though, like for an armor piece, that's not a diorama, that's not a vignette, that's just an armor on a permanently attached to a scenic base.
Right.
If the footprint of that base, now not the wood and all the outside, well, it could be that, but I'm thinking more the actual terrain part, the finished terrain part. If the unoccupied space on that base is like more than half again the footprint under the tank, it's probably too big.
Yes. Well, what's his name? Who wrote the book on the subject?
What's his name? You mean Shepard Payne?
Shep Payne. Yes, I'm sorry, Shep. I apologize, Shep. That was one of the points that he made in his book was right sizing the base to the model. Now he was talking about dioramas, so he was talking about right sizing the item or what you were trying to display in the diorama, but the same concept applies. Not having a base so large that the model gets almost lost in it.
Yes. Another bad base for me, this is my opinion, folks, and I almost don't want to go here because I know at a couple of big shows we've attended in the last year or two, there have been numerous entries from a couple of modelers. So it's like some folks have honed in on this style of display base. And they're putting multiple entries in on this type of display base. And I think it's detracting from their work.
Which is?
You go to the craft store and you buy a picture frame.
Yeah.
And the picture frame, typically the ones they're using for these bases. So trying to describe this for an audio podcast. You've got the maximum outside rectangular square of the picture frame.
Right.
And then you have the opening in the middle.
Right.
And the bevel of the frame, the opening in the middle is the high point, and it slopes downward away to the high point, to the high side, right? To the outside dimension of the picture frame. So what I see that I find is detracting from the display is they set the model inside this picture frame, down inside that. So it's like it's sitting inside four walls.
Right.
One, it's too big almost immediately. And two, you've put your model down in this hole with this wall, with these four walls around it.
Yeah.
It could look a lot better. And the easiest way to make that look better is to cut a piece of something that just sits just inside the size of the opening, but up high at the top of the frame instead of down inside of it.
Right. So it brings the model at the bottom of the model up to the top.
To the top of the frame, and then the edges slope away from that instead of sloping up, then down into a hole where you put your model.
Yeah.
I don't think that addresses the too big problem. I still think almost all those end up being too big, especially for armor models.
I agree.
Don't like that. So that's two examples, the picture frame bases and just the general too big, things you got to watch. A third one is sometimes parts of the model overhang the base.
Yes.
And I think if that's like the corner of a fender or the gun barrel, kind of doesn't matter.
Right.
But when you have like appreciable lengths of the running gear not touching the grass and dirt and it's hanging off the edges of the base,
mm-hmm.
For me personally, I don't think that works. I think those bases are too small.
Yeah. You can go too small as well as too big.
What else you thinking about bases, Dave?
To go back to your picture frame example, I do think it is a disservice to any model to simply get a picture frame with a black edge, put a piece of cardboard or foam board or whatever, usually it's gray, and put that in the frame and then sit the model on top of that. It just does not look finished the way the model looks finished. And I think it draws the eye away from the model. And you do see that. Now, again, these are opinions, not hard and fast rules. If you don't want to make bases for your models, you don't have to. Again, the biggest advantage is if your model is on a base, it's easier for judges and show crews to move around. And, and if it's attached to the model is actually attached to the base, transport becomes a whole lot easier. But you don't have to do it if you don't want to. I just think that all other things being equal, it's a good idea to do. And yes, it is an investment of modeling time to create a base, but I think it's worth doing because it can make the presentation of the model look so much better.
And we've talked before about not shortcutting it.
Yes. Yep.
Even a scenic base.
Yep.
Sometimes they look like they've run over a little roughshod and not quite put the effort into the base that they put into the model.
Well, and this is the same thing, and this happens to me when it comes to particularly modern jet aircraft. I get to the end of the build of the aircraft, and then there's no ordnance, and I'm so tired of the model, I want it to be done and to move on, that I don't put either that I leave ordnance off or I don't put the effort into the ordnance that I do to the model. And yeah, that's giving it short shrift, and you shouldn't do that. Make the effort on the base that you made on the model, even though it is an investment of modeling time. And really, it's not hard to do a good base. I mean, and if you do the same I know many modelers out there that I can walk along a row of models at a model contest, and I know whose model is whose. First of all, I know because it's amazing. If you take art history classes, you learn Rembrandt's style or Gauguin or whoever's style. What we do is an art, and every modeler has a style. And if you see their work enough, you get to the point where you can spot, oh, that's so-and-so's model.
Yeah, whether they want one or not.
Whether they want one or not. And sometimes they've fallen into it without realizing it. But the same thing goes for bases. There are modelers who they know, they have a base style, and it may be a very nice base style, but they use that same base style for all their displays. There's nothing wrong with that. It's great. But if you develop a base style that you're going to use for all your models, it does make cranking out a good base, a good quality base, easier to do because you're not reinventing the wheel every time.
Well, I think my last point on this one is going to be, I think for the group of modelers we know,
yep,
the ones who don't use the permanent bases are the ones who are the most prolific volume builders that we know.
That's probably true.
And I suspect that it's not so much the time it takes to pop out that base to do it, is that they have to store all these models they're kicking out. And if you put it on a base, it's going to take up more room than the model without it.
In most cases, yes.
In almost every case, it's going to
Yep.
take up more room than the model without it.
Yep.
Unless your base is too small.
Right. And then that's another problem.
Maybe that's why they're doing it. I don't know. Any more on bases, Dave?
No, I think that beats that one to death.
Now, this is one I really was curious about what you wanted to talk about.
Okay.
Basically, is model show plans or model show planning. I don't think you mean the putting on of the show. I think you
Right.
mean what you're doing in preparation for attending the show.
Yep.
I could be wrong. So
No,
it's your,
no.
it's your topic, man. Let it roll.
we can talk about all of those things if you want. So, but no, you and I, your little misadventure notwithstanding, you and I have managed to attend a lot of shows this year, and we're not done yet. We've got at least one, maybe two if we're lucky, more to go. I think that at least that was a result of prior planning prevents poor performance.
That's right.
That you and I, at the beginning of this year, sat down and we had more than one discussion about, okay, let's look at our calendars. Let's look at the show calendars. What shows do we know that we really want to attend? What shows would we like to attend? What weekends, we've got vacations, graduations, everything. So we blocked out what weekends or what weeks were just bad for us. And we planned out, I think one of the reasons we attended so many contests this year, fingers crossed, is that we, at the beginning of the year, took the time to plan out what shows there were, what ones we wanted to attend, what ones could we fit into our family life schedule. And then not only did that at the beginning of the year, but then we, throughout the year, as things developed, were like, okay, let's do this, or, oh, we're going to have to drop that. Or, well, just give you two examples. One, amps. We added amps after our initial planning. It wasn't contained in the initial planning. And we added amps because of the fact that, A, we really wanted to go. B, it was a location that we could do easily.
And C, Sharvat was going to kill us if we didn't show up.
Okay, well, I wasn't going to mention the murder threat, but yeah, well, that's absolutely true, and he would have had every right to do it. But The point being that we kept our eyes open and saw opportunities where they were. And we also adjusted and juggled as things happened. Well, I mean, one example is the MMCL show that obviously life interfered for you. 2, you're involved in the space industry, and MMSI and space launches, there was a possibility they were going to conflict. And so even though you and I had planned MMSI from an early date, there was a point at there where we were like, is this going to happen? And if it isn't going to happen, what are we going to do? And luckily, it looks like it's going to work out for us. But keeping the dynamic planning going throughout the year, and then discovering when contests are announced, because at the beginning of the year, you don't always know every contest. Like I knew there would be one in Murfreesboro sometime late in the year, but when we were planning at the beginning, we didn't know the date. We had no idea. And only later did we find out. And like I said, we're still trying to figure out if we can squeeze that one in. That may be the bridge too far, but I'd like to still try if we can, because we've got a lot of listeners and modeling friends down in Central Tennessee and the surrounding areas, and I'd dearly love to see them if we can. So, talk to me about model show plans.
Well, I think that's it. You look at the calendar, you decide what you're going to go to for the year, and maybe we have different motivations than just normal attendees, because we're trying to squeeze content out of a lot of these, and it's not just about going to the show for us.
Yes, that's true.
But even still, we sure have a lot of fun. So maybe it is ultimately.
It is one of the big motivations for doing all that planning is that you and I have both said, if you're not going to model shows, you're missing out on a big, big part of modeling. And I'm not talking about the contest. As I rather famously said to someone at the Nationals this year, the contest is the least important thing going on at the convention.
And I had to pick his eyes up off the floor and come back to him.
Yeah. And that's the Nationals.
So that opinion is not shared by everyone.
Exactly. But it is, I mean, for me, let's say there's an opinion for me. If you're not going to shows, you're missing out on a really important part of modeling, because even though this is a fairly solitary hobby in many respects, there is a lot of social interaction to be had, and the interaction with other people is what makes life great. I'm proud when I produce a really nice little model, but I would much rather spend 30 minutes talking about what I experienced in building that model with a modeling friend at a show. That brings much more joy than the finished model itself. And so I am a huge believer in going to model shows and interacting with people. And yes, you and I are extra motivated because we get to meet listeners who many times we have interacted with through email or DMs or posts in the dojo, but never actually gotten to meet face to face. And that getting to meet, even if we talk for 3 or 5 minutes or just introduce ourselves or whatever, it just adds so much richness to the enjoyment of the hobby.
Well, I think the bottom line here is that plan the things as early as you can, because that gives those non-modelers in your life around you who are impacted by you being gone for a weekend or 5 days or whatever it happens to be. It just makes it easier to negotiate those things.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's true at anything, not just model shows, but it's certainly even though this is a hobby, such a concept certainly applies. And, you know, we pick the big ones we want to go to, and then we fill in around that. And I think MMSI, you know, looking good for that one, but that was a stretch goal for us to get to that one. To get to that one, and we are giving up Cincinnati for that one.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's compromises. We can't be everywhere. There's compromises in everything in life, but we've been to a lot of shows, my friend, and it's been a lot of fun, and hopefully we'll get that one more in this year. And I hate I missed our show.
Well, life intervenes. That's one of those points you were just making about prior planning and all of that. You had before you a situation, and you correctly chose, I've got family stuff to deal with that is way more important than my hobby. And you made the correct call. Even though I was deeply disappointed you weren't at the show, I completely understood the fact that you made the right choice.
Well, Dave, I knew where you were going with this one.
Yes. And
it's really timely, not just in the last 24 hours, but for the entire year, really.
Yes, absolutely.
Are books relevant as a media in the digital age?
My answer to that question is an emphatic yes. The argument against books, either digital books or actual physical books, is that there is so much free information available on the internet, and much of it is photographs and reference, that the theory goes, you can find anything on the internet. Why do you need books? And my answers to that is I'm willing to acknowledge there's a lot of information out on the internet. Now, it's not always as easy to find as people think it is, but there is a lot of information. Just to give you one example, there is a great website out there on ejection seats from the time they were developed all the way to today. And you can find photographs of every type of ejection seat manufactured, both British, American, Soviet, whatever. And it is a fantastic resource. And I go there when I'm building a modern jet. And it's a great resource. It would also be a great resource as a book. You'd love to be able to flip through it, but it's a great resource. But not everything is like that, where it's all gathered in one place. And you can spend hours and hours looking for just the right photograph of the left gear door of an F-106, or you can go pick up your detail and scale book, or if you've got the digital copy, open up your tablet, scroll through it, and you're going to find the photograph you need. You know where it is, rather than having to go out and search for it on the internet. So practically, I think books are still useful because they gather the relevant information into a single location that you can put your hands on when you need it, rather than spending a significant amount of time, depending on how obscure the thing you're looking for is, on the internet looking for just the right photograph or just the right piece of information. So as a practical matter, I think books are still useful for the value of gathering the information in a place where you know it is and you can just go lay your hands on it. I will not deny that there is I don't know if I want to call it a nostalgia value, or just there is a joy in and of itself in having an actual book and sitting down with it and leafing through it. Even if you're not looking for something particular, just taking that book, whatever the subject happens to be, and going through it and either reading or looking at the photographs or the illustrations or whatever, I get we've talked about this before. You get a lot of your modeling inspiration from photographs.
Yeah.
And that's why you not only have books, but you also, you watch German eBay and get a lot of photographs of Soviet stuff and things like that. I get a lot of my inspiration from reading, and I get inspired to build Saburo Sakai's A6M20 as it appeared at Guadalcanal when he was wounded by reading about it. I mean, you read the book Samurai, you can't help but get inspired and want to build a model of that aircraft. So books are useful for being able to inspire the modeler to build. And I don't get that same inspiration from the internet. I mean, I find some great stories and things like that, but it's not the same. And there's a joy in collecting books, just like there's a joy in having a stash bigger than you're going to be able to build. There is a joy in collecting and having those books and knowing you have those books, even though they spend the vast majority of the time sitting behind you on a shelf. I'm not sure. I'm highly skeptical that the internet will ever replace books, completely replace either history books or modeling reference books. I think it's a great addition. I think that it can supplement and add to the books in your library. But if you gave me a choice of having a library of books or access to the photographs on the internet, I think I would take the library of books every time. So what do you think? Having just spent a large amount of money on books.
Well, clearly I like books. I've got Tankograd's new KV book here. 2 copies, in fact, not both for myself, but
I was wondering if you were one of those guys, people who buy two models, 2 kits of the same model, one as a backup. I was wondering if maybe you were one of these guys, but you had a backup book.
I'd be like a comic book collector of current titles. You buy your reader copy and you're one to preserve.
Exactly.
No, that's not the reason. But you hit on a lot of great points, and I think they distill down to convenience.
Yes, that too.
The price you're paying for the convenience is storage space and whatever. I mean, this KV book's huge, very big.
Now you've got to build a glass case to house it in.
Very, very big book, and it's the ease of access and the aggregation of information. I mean, the thing about the internet is stuff comes and goes, or it's in a forum and it gets buried because of continued postings.
Right.
There's some software out there you can get to download websites in their entirety.
Yeah.
And some work and some don't work very well, depending on what kind of website that you're trying to download.
Right.
But the problem is most people don't do that. So most of the time they lose access to some of this information over time.
Right. The internet is not like a book perfectly preserved forever. It's more like a piece of food that continually spoils and is continually refreshed at the same time.
Because people may create a great website for a subject.
Right.
And then they either get out of the hobby or their interests change or they pass away or whatever.
Or they fail to pay their internet service provider fee and hosting fee.
And it goes away. I like books. I got 2 books in the mail today. 3, but it was a duplicate copy of the KV book for Master Evan.
Yes.
I got Tankograd's new KV book and a friend and listener that we'll mention during the shout out sent me a book for the Curtis SOC Seagull.
Yep. The Ginter book, I believe.
Yes, the Ginter book. And my comment back to him was, well, thank you for one. But,
yeah, right. Obviously.
For a guy like me, who's like in the shallow end of the aircraft swimming pool, this is a great single source reference.
Yeah.
I've got this book. I can go look at this book. The pictures are big. It's like, I think it's A4 format, maybe.
Yes, it is.
And some of these pictures are single picture per page or two per page, and it's fabulous.
Yeah, it's more than enough to build a 72nd scale model of the seagull
with some enhancements.
Exactly.
It's a great book. My point is, it's all there.
Yeah,
I don't have to get on my computer and go find each individual piece of this on 15 different websites or whatever.
Right.
It's all here now. After I say that, somebody's going to link me to a seagull
website
that's going to have more information than the Ginter book.
Right.
But as of today, I don't need anything else.
Right.
And the KV book is that in spades.
Yep.
I mean, this thing is colossal.
And the other nice thing is that you can go sit on your couch. You can watch Tennessee whoop up on Arkansas.
I don't know about that.
and sit there and enjoy the game and leaf through either one of those books and get the enjoyment of doing it. It's much harder to do that, to watch the game and troll through 1,000 internet web pages.
Most of this information may be out there on the net.
Yeah.
The scale drawings to this degree of precision and completeness are not.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of lower level, very granular information in this book that has detailed drawings with it that you're not going to find on the internet.
Right.
It's just, I really like books. I think there's always going to be a place for books. And, we mentioned a couple episodes back, Detail and Scale, when they were going to reconstitute that brand and that product line, the original thought was that it was going to be digital.
And only digital.
And only digital. And that didn't work out because folks in this hobby have a mindset like we do.
Yeah. Well, and let me say, I love the digital versions of the Detail and Scale books. Rock has converted me to having those on a tablet. But to me, that's more akin to having a book than going out on the internet.
Exactly. It's still a book.
It's still a book in a location with the information all together, as opposed to going out on the internet. And unless you happen to find that SOC3 Seagull site that was built by somebody who was super dedicated to that particular aircraft, the information that you might be looking for on the Seagull is in 30 different places. And you'd have to find all those places. And my wife says that I'm not a modeler, I'm a librarian who occasionally models. And she's not wrong. And I'm proud of that fact because I like books.
I'll be curious what the listeners think.
Me too.
Anything else on books, Dave?
Buy them. Buy lots of them. Oh, there's one thing that you mentioned that I was going to mention. This year, I've bought more books than I bought models.
I think I have too.
Yep.
It's probably a good thing.
Yes, I think that's a good thing.
Plastic Model Mojo is brought to you by Squadron. Head on over to squadron.com for the latest in kits and accessories, all at a great price and with great service. Are you a modeler on the go? Check out the Squadron mobile app for your Apple or Android device for easy shopping from just about anywhere. Squadron, adding to the stash since 1968.
I spend way too much time on the Squadron app. Man, that thing it's great / awful because, some people, if you're standing in line or you're killing a couple of minutes, you go look at Twitter or whatever, Instagram or TikTok or whatever. I find myself going on the Squadron app and going to see what new has dropped in 70-second scale.
How much money are you going to send, Brandon?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the Benchtop halftime report, and I got a feeling this might be a little underwhelming this time.
I wouldn't say it's underwhelming, at least for me. I've made progress. Now, the last 4 or 5 days have not been particularly good because due to combination of circumstances, I haven't been able to make it to the bench much at all. But the A7 M2 is the underside is completely painted. I have masked it off, and who knows, tonight after we record this, I may apply the base top coat to it. But it's moving along. It's moving along well. The photo etch and 3D print set that I bought for the Musaru finally arrived. And so when I'm not working on the A7 M2, I have started on our Musaru build, which I have to get done by the beginning of March. And that's a lot closer than I would lead myself to believe that it is. So I'm moving on it. And I like this set of photo etch and 3D print material. I've made progress. I've started the Musaru. I've made some progress on it, and that's moving along. And then I've got the BT7 from Flyhawk that I got halfway together and then stopped, that I am going to I'm going to finish the build on that so I can get that into the paint shop as well. So it's moving. And not moving as much as I'd like, but then again, I have a job and a family, and older daughter who just bought a new car, a younger daughter who just bought her first car, and, so I'm spending my time doing insurance stuff and title transfers and all of that. And those little things suck time out that otherwise I'd be modeling. But you know what? I don't regret any of them because your family time is great time. So you view it you keep things in perspective. That's all I would say. If you're feeling down because you haven't gotten to the model bench, that's fine. Figure out why and dedicate yourself to getting back to it. But don't feel bad about the things that kept you away from the bench that were family, that were other enjoyments in life. Enjoy those moments, because I'm here to tell you, you're going to blink your eyes and they're going to be gone.
So when are you getting your driveway widened?
I now have currently 4 cars sitting in my driveway. And when my older daughter comes over to visit, I have 5. And I've got a fairly big driveway, and 5 cars fills it up. So yeah. I don't know that I'm getting my driveway widened, but yeah, I'm at the point where I'm starting to have to regularly move cars around. You're kind of in that situation yourself, aren't you?
A little bit, but I don't have one that's permanently in my driveway that was too expensive to have permanently sitting in my driveway.
Yes, absolutely. That's a problem I have to cure.
Well, folks, I got nothing for you. Unfortunately, I've got the Paul gloss coated, and just because of the last 2 weeks, I've not gotten much past that.
You did get I think you put the gloss coat on in the last 2 weeks. I think that was right before. But
I think it was in the last benchtop halftime report.
Was it? I didn't think you had the gloss on. I think you were ready to put the gloss on.
I think I did, and other than that, I think I talked about, going through my decals and figuring out what I was going to use and not use, and did a bunch of mental modeling.
Right. Well, and you did some test modeling on your mule decal, paint and decal mule. And it's a shame you weren't at the MMCL show, because Lee Fogel stopped by the table and we had a really interesting discussion regarding the different setting solutions. Warren Dickinson, Lee Fogel, myself, and Inch, and talking about what solutions we use, what we have found that works on what, the pitfalls of the 80s and 90s Japanese decals, or decals from Japanese manufacturers is what I should say. And the fact that Avia Print is going to redo all those Japanese tail codes, which I'm thrilled about. But Yeah, and you did do some experimentation with those decals to figure out, okay, this is going to work and this isn't.
Yeah, you're a good coach, Dave.
I'm trying to find the silver line. And again, like I said, there is nothing more demoralizing than spending 4 days without power. Because even when you get it back, your life doesn't get back to normal for like another 2 or 3 days.
You know what's worse than 4 days without power, Dave?
2 weeks without power?
Well, 5.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, because you got it back 24 hours earlier than they were telling you were going to.
Well, they were telling us because they were tired of phone calls. Well, the kit releases keep on coming, and
boy, do they.
There's a lot of crazy stuff happening, man.
The kit releases, I am thrilled, proud, stunned, happy. I've got an all fave list, and only one of them is actually 72nd scale. And we live in the golden time of modeling.
You didn't try to find a yawn.
I would have had to dig for a yawn. The lists of stuff that's coming out, there were so many good ones that you didn't see the bad ones for the good ones.
Well, I would say the 72nd scale folks are living large right now.
Yes, we are.
But I'll let you go first. What's your first fave, Dave?
The first fave is that Eduard has announced in 72nd scale. Now, we're not going to get this till late 2025, but the folks at Eduard are going to do all of the early Merlin engine Spitfires, basically the Mark 1 through the Mark 5. Now, they've already done the Mark 9 through many of the later models, and there are already Spitfire Mark 1s out there and Mark 5s out there, but man, Eduard has been knocking it out of the park. I mean, I bought 2 of their Royal class kits within the last 2 months, and they are just awesome models. And I know there will be Royal class Spitfire Mark 1s and Mark 5s, and I'll buy the crap out of them. I'm thrilled to see it because I know it's going to be a great kit. How about you? Fave or yawn?
My first one, Dave, is a fave.
Okay.
Micro Mirror. Out of Ukraine.
Out of Ukraine.
Has announced a 72nd scale M2 F3 lifting body.
Yes. Yes. Micro Mirror is known for doing a lot of unusual subjects.
So they've got everything between the M2 F3 lifting body and the Turtle Revolutionary War submarine.
Exactly.
And a whole bunch of crazy crap in between, man.
Absolutely. And I know you've gotten into these lifting bodies hard, man.
You know, I'm going to buy this one for sure. Yep. Guaranteed. As soon as I can get my hands on that, I'm going to get one. Yep. So looking forward to it. That's just, they're just so cool.
Yep. Absolutely they are.
Well, what's your next one?
And okay, this one is one of 2 48 scale kits I've got on my list as a fave. Again, I'm showing the love to my 48 scale friends out there. Arma has announced that they are doing a 48 scale Mi-28N. This is the Russian, let's call it the equivalent of the Apache. It's the Russian 2-man, not side by side, but front and back seating helicopter that you're seeing used a whole lot in Ukraine. And I can imagine that it's going to be extremely popular among the 48 scale brethren who are really looking for a really good kit of the Mi-28N, which is the latest version of the Mi-28. So I'm happy to see my 48 scale brothers happy. How about you?
Well, my next fave, again, 72nd scale. It's a Chinese company. I suspect these are 3D printed.
Yeah.
And I hope they're better than the Beaver models equivalent. They've released 4 different sets of Imperial Japanese Navy pilots and ground crew.
Yes, I saw those.
So that's pretty recent on ScaleMates.
Yep. And
So
what's the name of the company?
It's Triumph Models,
Gotcha.
like the car, Triumph.
Right.
I don't know. We'll see. They only have artwork up now, so
Right.
I'd be real curious how these actually are. So looking forward to that.
Yeah. Somebody out there post pictures if you've got them. Well, as soon as they come out.
May end up being me.
Yep.
Well, what's next for you?
All right. This is another 48 scale one. So again, shout out to the 48 scale brothers. And I follow on Twitter Fine Molds. And our friends at Fine Molds announced a late model Zero, an A6M5 in 48 scale, which, do you remember the Fine Molds Oscar in 72nd scale, where the canopy framing is actually molded separate from the canopy?
Yes.
Yeah, well, you remember it because you found one at Heritage Con. Well, this is a Fine Molds 48 scale Zero, A6M5. They're doing that same thing with the canopy, but in 48 scale, where they mold the framing separately. And the detail level from the photographs that they have published, they've published not only 3D artwork, they've also published some photos of kit parts and actually photographs of parts of the molds on their Twitter feed. And man, does this thing look good. In fact, I re-X'd or retweeted a tweet from Fine Molds about this kit, and Chris Siebert, Lufram, was like, I already have one pre-ordered. So yeah, it's going to be popular, and I'm happy for the 48 scale guys, because I cannot imagine this is not going to be a really great kit.
Well, my next one is from IBG.
Okay. Well, oh God, I love their stuff.
72nd scale again.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know how much of this is new and how much of it is a combined boxing.
Yep.
But they've got a kit coming out. It's the Scammell Pioneer tank recovery tractor.
Yep.
With the trailer.
Yep.
With a Cruiser Mark 1/Mark 3.
Yep.
All in the same box. So you get the whole thing.
And yeah, I don't know if that's just combining 2 kits that were already out, or that's one or both of those are new. But yeah, the IBG 72nd scale armor, not only armor, but armor and soft skins. They do great kits, no question, but such interesting subjects. You can imagine doing one of those in desert camo with the desert camo Crusader on it. And
I built the Airfix Scammell and trailer as a kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
I probably wouldn't want to do that again.
No, but you want to do this one.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of stuff in one box.
Yes.
Everything you might want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even in 72nd scale, when you're done, not a small model.
No, it's not. It's
Yep.
a lot to it. What do you got next?
Well, next one's a point of just absolute. It's completely personal to me. A company called Halberd, Halbard, like the medieval weapon, out of Ukraine, has announced a 32nd scale conversion for the Trumpeter P47 to convert it to an XP47H, which is the prototype that they did of the P47 with an inline engine, and it looks like a shark. And speaking of the MMCL show, first of all, this is one of my favorite aircraft. It just looks so neat. It is a shame it did not get a production order and get into combat, because it's just so good looking. At the MMCL show this past week, a modeler had entered a 48 scale XP47, and I didn't get to find and talk to that person. And whoever you are, if you're listening, reach out, because I love that model. It was really, really nice looking. You did a really great job, and it's just an attractive model. So this is not everyone's cup of tea, and you've got to buy the 32nd scale Trumpeter P47 to start with, the Razorback. But yeah, if I was going to build something in 32nd scale, that would be high on my list. So, not everybody's cup of tea, but a fave for me.
Well, I'm surprised you haven't mentioned this one yet.
Okay.
KP Models.
Okay.
A Grumman J4F Widgeon.
Yep.
A new tool plus 3 other decal option kits.
Yep.
I mean, the only option before was the old Airfix one.
Yes. Yep. Because I don't think Sword did a Widgeon.
I don't think they did.
I don't think they did. So yes, you're right. That fills a hole. Those things were used a lot in World War II.
Now it's a smaller one. It's like somewhere between a float plane and a flying boat.
Yep. Yep. It technically, I think, is classed as a flying boat, but it's a really neat little aircraft that didn't get a lot of glory because it was as much a utility aircraft as anything else. But I can definitely see the folks who are into World War II Navy aircraft being excited by that.
Well, what you got next?
I've got nothing next. So I didn't have a yawn this time because I was so enamored with all the stuff that was getting announced. So do you have a yawn?
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I've got a yawn. I've got a fave.
Okay.
I'm going to drop the yawn because I'm going to cut Dragon some slack.
Oh.
so that just took care of the yawn all by itself.
Okay.
My final fave, Dave, is from Paracel Miniatures.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing a kit of a Mekong Delta type civilian longboat.
Yes, I saw that. I know.
We talked about this before. I think we mentioned it before. I'll mention it again. We're far enough from the Vietnam War now that we can. How did we say it last time? We can not only talk about it, but we can. I don't know. I can't remember how we said it last time, but
model it more objectively than we might.
We can be more objective about the entire thing, be it books, kits, finished models, or whatever. We can be objective about it and a lot less biased about it. Paracel Miniatures out of Vietnam is doing a lot of really cool things.
Yes, they are. And that longboat is really, you just look at that. And I mean, the possibilities are near endless for modeling
the thing that comes to mind is to me, a Pibber built waterline, and this thing and some of the other small boats that various manufacturers have made, and just some really cool dioramas.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Which reminds me, there's one more fave I do want to mention.
Okay. Alpine
Miniatures has announced, and I think they've actually released these. They have 2 figures from the U.S. 2nd Infantry Division in 35th scale. And man, the quality of Alpine's sculpting is just unbelievably good. I know sometimes some people have criticized the lack of maybe a little more life in the poses, but man, these things are just unbelievably attractive models or figures, whatever. And yeah, I suspect we'll be seeing those show up standing next to 35th scale tanks at the amps next year.
Bases by Bill is back with quality display bases that enhance any model. From U.S. and Japanese wooden carrier decks to custom-sized cherry hardwood bases, Bases by Bill display bases are available for any type of model and for any size. Oh, and have you heard? Bases by Bill is now a U.S. reseller for one-man army high-definition paint masks. These masks bring amazing detail to your model, even maintenance stencils. They have to be seen to be believed. And all One Man Army products include free shipping. Check basesbybill.com to see the products. Bases by Bill for all your model display needs.
Mike, we're almost at the end of the episode. I'm assuming that means you're almost at the end of your modeling fluid, and I almost don't have to ask if you enjoyed your bullet.
Dave, I did enjoy the bullet, but you know what? I think the Russell's Reserve 10-year is my new favorite.
Yeah, you had said that. You keep going back to the Russells no matter what else you try. I mean, whether it's an old favorite or something new. You know, no matter how much you like the item you're trying, if it's not Russell's, you always seem to be comparing it to the Russells.
I've said it before, for a 10-year, it's a bargain.
Yep, I agree.
And my taste recommendations have got a pretty good record among the listenership.
Well, and something I'll point out that I'm sure you've probably seen, that Russells have released a cask strength and a single barrel. Those are higher price points and they're stronger ABVs, but it'd be interesting to try them.
Well, you can buy me one. I'll try it.
Oh, you got it.
What about your beer, man?
Well, you know, this is a lager. The notes on the can describe it as full-flavored beer, upfront biscuity and honey that fade into a light, dry finish.
That's rich.
Yeah, it's described as malty and crisp on the label. And I'm not a malty fan, but I will tell you that the malt isn't so heavy. It's not like a Scotch ale or something like that. It's not so heavy and forward that's obnoxious. I'm not sure if biscuity is exactly the way I would describe it, but it has definitely got body to it. It is very low hop. So if you're not an IPA fan, if you don't like all that hipster IPA, how bitter can we make our beer stuff? This beer is for you because it is very low in hops content and therefore in the bitterness. 6% alcohol by volume. A good beer. Highwire Brewing out of Asheville, North Carolina. Hopefully Highwire Brewing still exists as we speak.
Yep.
I hope they survived. I hope everything is okay for them. And if you want to support the folks in Asheville, North Carolina, as they're getting back on their feet, you could do a lot worse than buying a 6-pack of Highwire Brewing's Circus Fest Oktoberfest lager beer. I enjoyed it. Mike, we are now truly at the end of the episode. Do you have a shout out or shout outs?
I've got 2.
Okay.
How many you got?
I got 1.
Okay, well, I'll go first and you put yours in the middle.
Yeah, you got it.
Well, first off is our customary shout out to all those folks who support Plastic Model Mojo through their generosity. The latest is Mr. Jason Sizemore, who has bought us a few beers, aka buy me a coffee. In fact, he's the first listener to use that avenue of support for us. So we appreciate that, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
Jason is also a member of MMCL who emancipated you from your duties of being club secretary.
And newsletter editor, more importantly. Yes. Thank you, Jason.
Yes, thank you for that, because now he's all mine, and thank you for the financial support. So if you'd like to be like Jason and support Plastic Model Mojo, we'd sure appreciate it. And there's several avenues you can do that. Like we just said, you can use Buy Me a Coffee. We call it Buy Me a Beer because we like beer instead of coffee. Patreon and PayPal. All those avenues are great to support the show, and the links for those can be found in the show notes of this episode. Folks, we appreciate it. And again, I'm going to keep mentioning it because we were like right on the cusp of launching this thing. We're in the final edits and the final approval. We got a new platform coming, and all your support is helping make that possible. And we're going to bring you a lot of great stuff through our new platform. So if you want to contribute, please do. It's all greatly appreciated.
I second that, and I support everything Mike just said. Thanks mainly to Mike and his efforts. We are on the cusp of something different, and hopefully something that expands your enjoyment of Plastic Model Mojo and all of our modeling friends. So thank you for your financial support. It really means a lot. I would like to shout out our friend of the podcast, Jeff Groves, Inch High Guy. Jeff was down for the MMCL contest. He and I got to go to lunch together. By the way, the Fish House in Shepherdsville is a great seafood restaurant. We had a great time there. And for reasons that Jeff knows, this shout out's for him. Thinking about you, buddy, and cannot wait to see you at the next modeling show you and I both are at. And Mike and I are gonna look at maybe coming up and trying to schedule a visit with you, because you've extended that invitation numerous times, and we'd love nothing better than to come out and hang out for a day.
Well, Dave, my final shout out is to our friend and Septemberist, John Vickus. John is the one who sent me the Seagull book.
Yes.
And I really appreciate his generosity.
John is a great guy. Again, you know how I have said that most modelers are really, really nice people. John is the embodiment of that.
Well, John, if you're listening, I'm sure you are. Thank you for the Seagull book. And maybe that was a kick in the pants to get me started on the Septemberist build for the next national convention.
There you go. That's clearly what he was trying to do.
I think maybe he already had a copy of the book, but
yeah,
he probably doubled down and had two things to accomplish through that donation. So, man, I appreciate it. It's a really good book. I don't think I'll need anything else to build my little Seagull.
Yep.
When and if I ever do.
You got to get to it, man.
Dave, you got anything else?
No, that's it, man. I think we're done with this episode.
Well, as we always say, Dave, so many kits.
So little time.